This is a proclamation of the kingdom of heaven. As a consequence of a long train of abuses and usurpations which events are designed to reduce the people to absolute despotism, when it becomes necessary for the people to abolish, dissolve, reinstate, or institute new government to protect the equality and secure the rights to which the laws of God and nature entitle them, a decent respect for the people of the world requires an explanation of the causes. In agreement with the Charter of the United Nations, the United States Declaration of Independence, and similar documents held in high esteem by other nations, certain truths have been universally acknowledged: that all people are created equal spiritually, that they are endowed by their Creator with personality, free will, and certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, the pursuit of truth and happiness, and the acquirement and possession of property. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among people, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government in that manner which seems most likely to secure their safety and happiness. Governments should not be changed for light and transient causes, and history shows that humanity is more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they have become accustomed. But, after a long train of abuses and usurpations, including repeated compromise of their unalienable rights by legislative force that reduces the people to progressive political and economic despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Therefore, it is the intent of the people to institute new government, even to reinstate the kingdom of heaven that Jesus inaugurated on earth, the divine government of the spiritual brotherhood of all humankind, founded on the sovereignty of God, within the jurisdiction of the reinstated kingdom of Hawaii, for the benefit of the people of Hawaii and the world. Such has been the patient sufferance of the people, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to abolish their former systems of government. It is in the interest of global security that we, the people, who are self-conscious children of God and citizens of the kingdom of heaven, headquartered in the kingdom of Hawaii, freely choose to reinstate the kingdom of heaven rather than resisting or fighting the evil, sin, and iniquity that has come to dominate the United States government and the state of Hawaii. The history of the government of the United States of America, from the times of the ratification of the Constitution in 1787, is a history of repeated injuries and compromise of unalienable rights, all having an objective to establish an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. Since the coup d'etat of the Kingdom of Hawaii on January 17, 1893, the lawful government of the United States has been progressively and increasingly overthrown and taken over by a Zionist conspiracy that has turned it into an ongoing criminal enterprise of sin and rebellion that threatens to gain power and control over all the people, nations, and natural resources of the world. The once lawful de jure government of the United States has been effectively replaced by the de facto Zionist-dominated government of the United States. Abrogations of Article 6, Sections 2 and 3 of the U.S. Constitution have long since rendered the supreme law of the land inoperative and meaningless. The moral collapse of the American government, the Federal Reserve System, and other central bankers has precipitated the current global political and economic crisis. They have conspired to overthrow and take over the government of the United States in order to use it and the people and their money to gain power and control over all under their new world order. They have illegally used the U.S. government to aid and abet the overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and the Philippines, Samoa, Iran, Korea, Guatemala, Vietnam, Grenada, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Diego Garcia, to say nothing of the governments of the indigenous people of North America. They have established a social order wherein all of the people are political and economic slaves without their knowledge, understanding, consent, or just cause. A society made up of slaves and slave masters of various rank and file in the guise of freedom and democracy. They have created political and economic slavery through evil quality enactments that are destructive of personal liberty and the freedom to choose good or evil for oneself. Legislative slavery is an invisible crime in America into which the people of the United States are born without their knowledge. By legislating the morality of the people, they have stolen their most basic personal liberty and forced them to pay to be slaves in America, in spite of the 13th Amendment against slavery. They have done to millions of people and their countries what they would never want done to themselves and their country, in violation of the golden rule of living, the will of God, the U.S. Constitution, and the law of nations. They have conspired with merchants and bankers to implement an industrialized civilization that is not and can never be sustainable, to create a grossly unequal distribution of commonly held resources in their favor. They have condoned, conspired, colluded, aided, and abetted militarization by the military-industrial complex. They have condoned, conspired, colluded, aided, and abetted financialization by the financial-industrial complex. They have assisted in decades of wealth transfers to the already rich and the further impoverishment of the disadvantaged. They have harbored endemic and systemic corruption, allowed the corruptors to take on the responsibilities of government, and protects them to the continuing and increasing detriment of the people. They have hidden the actual condition of the economy by distorting media coverage on causes and solutions with lies and disinformation. They have overseen declining wages, rising unemployment, failing banks, rising inflation, and runaway indebtedness, turning consumers into debt slaves. They have created a regulatory environment that produced an open field for fraud. They have destroyed traditional communities unwilling to voluntarily give up or sell the resources on which their communities are based. They have destroyed traditional communities unwilling to allow their land bases to be damaged so that other resources such as gold and oil can be extracted. They have propagated and maintained an industrialized civilization based upon and requiring persistent and widespread violence. They have created a clearly defined and widely accepted but often unspoken hierarchy whereby violence done by those higher on the hierarchy to those lower is fully rationalized, while violence done by those lower on the hierarchy to those higher is regarded with shock, horror, and ruthless retribution and retaliation. They permit those higher in the hierarchy to increase the amount of property they control and make money by destroying or taking the lives of those lower under the name of production. They persecute, kill, or otherwise destroy the lives of those lower on the hierarchy who damage the property of those above under the name of justice. They refuse to undergo any sort of voluntary transformation to a sane and sustainable way of thinking and living, thereby immiserating the vast majority of human beings while degrading the planet until the global personality ecosystem collapses. The longer it persists, the worse things become for humans and all life that lives during it and for those who come after. They foster group extinction rather than group survival. They act immorally and stupidly by not benefiting the natural communities on which they depend. They act as if might makes right, even if it involves mutual assured destruction. They actively promote increased population and consumption, contributing to a certainty of unnecessary violence, death, and privation resulting from the unavoidable correction of the population overshooting the carrying capacity of resources. They prove themselves to be insane by their urge to destroy life, while doing to others and their nations what they would never want done to themselves or theirs. They have a government of forced military-sponsored occupation from its beginning, being originated by slave owners on stolen lands. They have created police forces to enforce the delusions of superiority of those high in the hierarchy that carry extreme consequences in the real world. Their secret law is that there is no law. They have ruled by force and force alone, despite the propagation of illusions to the contrary. Might makes right only in chicken coop politics. They have acted upon the belief that controlling and abusing the natural world is justifiable, while the insane leaders know not they are criminally insane. They have privileged economics, not community well-being, not morals, not ethics, not justice, not life itself, to dictate agendas, policy, and decisions. They dictate and demand conquest abroad and repression at home. They have relentlessly persecuted many for opposing their war against the rights of people. They have obstructed the administration of justice. They have made judges dependent on their will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. They have erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. They have kept among us standing armies without the consent of our legislatures and contrary to constitutional restrictions. They have affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. They have criminally syndicated their activities and have combined to form such groups as the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, Bank for International Settlements, International Monetary Fund, European Central Bank, and the World Bank Group, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, International Development Association, International Finance Corporation, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, and the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes, to subject us to debts foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving its assent to their acts of pretended legislation. They have deprived many of the benefits of trial by jury and falsely imprisoned many. They have engaged in extraordinary renditions, transporting many to unknown locations to be tortured and tried for pretended offenses. They have plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, impoverished our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. They are transporting large armies of mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy a civilized nation. In every stage of these oppressions we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A government whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. The current de facto government of the United States has become so destructive and irredeemable that it needs to be abolished for the illegal government it is, and the lawful de jure government reinstated in its place. Government must have a commitment to fairness and the golden rule of living. Therefore, as an ambassador of the kingdom of heaven on earth, appealing to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do I, by the authority of the Prince of Peace and the brotherhood of man, solemnly publish and declare that all men are the sons of God, and of right ought to be free and independent as new citizens of the kingdom of heaven, that they are absolved from all allegiances, and that all political connection is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as a free and independent people we have the full right and power to reinstate the kingdom of heaven, establish the central bank and treasury thereof, while opening wide the doors of the kingdom to all who recognize the fact of the sovereignty of God, believe in the truth of sonship with God, and have faith in the effectiveness of the supreme human desire to do the will of God, to be like God. We can conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things that are consistent with the will of God and the law of the universe. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence and the Prince of Peace, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Brothers and sisters, the kingdom of God is at hand.